Welcome to the University of Missouri. My name is Todd Turner. I'm the president of Collegiate Sports Associates, and today, on behalf of ADU, we're going to speak with Jim Sterk, longtime athletics director at the Division I level and now the AD at the University of Missouri. Jim, thanks for hosting us.
Well, it's great to have you here. It was great yesterday to have you talk to staff and coaches, and just really important time to, as they are developing their careers, to have someone like yourself and Drew come and talk to them.
Well, we enjoyed doing that, and I spent a lot of time like you on campuses across America. I want to talk a little bit about your journey, and then I want to get into game day and what you've been doing this weekend. You got the Gamecocks here, and it's 8:30 in the morning on Saturday before you play South Carolina, and you don't kick off until 3. And already the tailgaters are out there in force at 8:30 in the morning. So
they're pretty dedicated.
A lot going on. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'd like to know, you talked about our meeting with your staff yesterday, young people who are interested in progressing in the profession. Talk a little bit about your journey, and in particular, people that enabled you to make good decisions and advance your career, and maybe what you've learned from each of them.
Well, I was not a high-level college athlete, but in the state of Washington, and I was a high school coach afterwards and teacher. Had gone to a basketball clinic, knew I didn't want to. My principal was trying to get me to get my principal credentials. Knew I didn't want to be the vice principal in charge of discipline. So I wanted to stay on the athletic side, and so was at the University of Washington, Marv Harshman's last basketball clinic, and Mike Lude was jogging around there, and I stopped him. I don't know what. Someone said, "Oh, there's Mike Lude, and the athletics director," and I asked him about master's program at the University of Washington. At that time, they didn't have any, and he had been at Kent State, and he said, there's 2 programs in the country at that time, Ohio U and UMass, that have sports administration programs. You don't have big-time playing experience or coaching. That would be really good for you. And so my wife Debbie and I, newly married, and her best friend had just moved to Ohio, and we said, okay, well, let's apply there. And I applied, and boy, what a great decision. I was one of, I say the token West Coast guy that they let in, because they only had let in a small amount of folks. And then from there, the collegiate side was opened up, and I did my internship in Chapel Hill, had studied that. John Swofford was the AD at the time, had started off in tickets, and they had a ticket internship open. I said, so that's not a bad way to go. But he was a Rhodes Scholar, a little bit different than me, but I thought that was a good place to go. So I interned at Chapel Hill. Then my first collegiate job was out at the University of Maine. At the ticket man.
In Orono.
In Orono.
Yeah. I've been there.
Yeah, it's... we always joke that you fell off the end of the earth after you passed Orono and the University of Maine, because there wasn't much up in Aroostook County. But great experience, and then had the good fortune of having Kevin White come at 9 months into my job there, and I could see that he was somebody that really was a professional, really was a driver, and started to jog, just because I'd never jogged before, but Kevin was, as you know, a big jogger every day, and so we started running. It was the only time I could be with him. I wasn't in meetings with him. I wasn't a high enough level to be in meetings with him on a daily basis, but so we just started. I was older because I had started off later in my career, so he has been huge in my life as far as giving me the confidence to hey, Jim, this isn't rocket science. You work hard, you do the right things, and you can succeed in this. And he had more confidence in me than I did in myself. And really, he kept saying, I'm going to get a big job, and I want you to come with me. I ended up going out to Seattle Pacific for a year, and then he was headed down to Maine, and I think I started the same day he did in Maine. I mean, at Tulane, from Maine.
Yeah.
So we went down to New Orleans, and I worked there. He said, give me a couple good years in the Bayou, and I'll help you get a Big Sky AD's job. And it ended up being 4, and I ended up, Portland State opened up and was moving from Division II to Division I, and I was hired as an athletics director there, so that was my first first job as an AD in 1995.
Wow. Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yes, it was. I'm
You were
an
like
old guy.
14. You were 14 when you got that job.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Mike Lude,
Yeah.
John Swofford, Kevin White, who those who don't know, Kevin is the athletics director at Duke, and has been AD at Notre Dame and Arizona State and Tulane, in addition to Maine, a legacy AD. All those three gentlemen are all legacy people. What did you learn from? You spoke a little bit about what you learned from Kevin. What did you learn from your time at North Carolina, or from even just your casual interaction with Mike Lude?
Yeah, I think Mike was really impactful as far as pointing me in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he asked me my background. You know, what are you looking to do? And I wanted to get my master's, and there weren't many programs, sports administration master's programs, and he sent me in the right direction. And Doc Higgins at Ohio U, he was a tough one. He's retired from doing it, but I think he still teaches there and is involved. And he was a great one, and really wrote us pretty good there. And I did an internship there in their in marketing and things that we within the athletics program there. So started to see what collegiate athletics was all about, and then going and being at a place like North Carolina when John Swofford was there, and he gave me the time of day and talked to me a little bit. And I had done a paper on the impact of athletics, and Patrick Ewing and Doug Flutie and those kind of people that had impact, and he really showed me that higher level, I guess, of intercollegiate athletics that I hadn't ever been around before.
Yeah. You know, young people come to you today, I'm sure they knock on your door. They did when I was an athletic director, and even today, and they say, how do I get where you are? You know, what kind of advice do you give the young folks that are looking to move in this profession?
One, because of what Mike did for me, I always try to, if at all possible, I meet with him or talk to him on the phone, and because he did that for me and gave me the time of day, and so I try to do that each time I can. But I tell them, as far as getting in the door is probably the most important, and doing an internship, getting work experience, so that people see what kind of person you are, what kind of effort you put into your job. And then once you get in, and especially staff in our department and others, is do a great job at what you're doing, or you'll never move up. Yeah. And people, a lot of times, I think that, hey, I want to be the AD. Well, you know, it's a long haul to get there sometimes, and maybe you don't get that. So love what you're doing. Take a job that you can feel really good about, and the people that you're working with, and pour yourself into it, and have passion about it, and I think that's the way to success.
Yeah, that's great advice. You know, your career's been interesting. Your first AD's job was at Portland State, and then from there to Washington State, and then the Pac-10, where we had a chance to work together when I was at Washington. So, and then you made the choice to go to San Diego State, which is kind of unusual. You went from a Power 5 program to a Group of 5 program. What was your thought behind that?
So I had been at Washington State 10 years, and that's sometimes a long time for an AD to have that tenure. I had a change of presidents, had a president retire 2 years earlier, and actually what brought it to a head was, you have kids. My two oldest daughters, suddenly I came back from a meeting, and they were in my office. And I really haven't told this story to anybody, but they were in my office, and I go, and they were looking sheepishly at me, and I said, "What is this? An intervention?" And they go, "Yeah, that's the word." and they said, "Dad, you know, we know you're not happy. What's going on? We're big girls now. You can talk to us." And so that weekend we had a family meeting, kind of, and just talked about it. And I get emotional talking about it, because it was important for all of us to talk, and Pullman was our home, but I said, I think I need to look. Things have changed. I think I need to look elsewhere. And we talked about it, prayed about it, and Monday morning, San Diego State opened up.
Wow.
And I called Debbie and my wife Debbie, and I said, this is one I think we need to look at it. We had been down there for the Holiday Bowl, so our girls loved it. They thought it was all the theme parks and SeaWorld and all that, and it was going to impact our youngest more because she was still in going into high school and all. But so it took 2-3 months to get it done, but eventually it was there. But I really studied it, thought it had an opportunity. They had a student fee that I called basically our TV contract, because it gave us enough resources opportunity to be successful, and they had gone through some issues, and so I felt like I could help them move forward. And it was I ended up every day I looked out my window and there were palm trees and a pool, and for a farm kid from the state of Washington, I thought I was on vacation every day.
And I thought it was just the weather that took you there. So there was family involved in that. That's kind of an interesting thing. In your career, takes a lot of time. Having done it myself, I know, you're always on.
Yeah.
So involving your family in your work, has that been something that's been constant throughout your career?
Yeah, and more as they got older, I was able to, and as you move up, you're able to involve them more. And I always encourage folks to have their families around, because you do spend so much time in this. I got home last night at about 9:30, and then I left this morning at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and I told Deb, I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we can we can spend some time, but it's been fun to be able to go to a women's game, and you got a 3-year-old running around the concourse, or I've had that at Tulane, and just to be able to bring them around, and then they love it. They went to bowls, and actually our kids were met at bowl games, where the Rose Bowl hosted us, and it's neat. And my oldest is just into everything. When Washington State had game day there last year, my 2 daughters were front row. They had, right there, and I sent them there. I helped sponsor the trip a little bit, so I sent them there with a Mizzou flag.
Oh, good.
So
that was a good idea.
Mizzou flag, but they had to be there because they had grown up around it, and it was such a big deal. So.
And they've got careers in sports.
Yeah, so my oldest was at Sacramento State, and now she moved here about 4 months ago. But she was assistant football ops and worked for Paul Wolf and Jody Sears there, and that had been at Washington State, and they pulled her down there. And my middle daughter's at Central Florida, working in their athletics program there and getting her MBA. So.
It's a family deal.
Yeah, it's a family deal.
I get it.
Yeah, you know about it.
That's great. So from San Diego State, you go to Missouri. Now, I want to talk a little bit about stakeholders, and people that influence your life, and people that you have to pay attention to. You have a lot of stakeholders that are part of intercollegiate athletics. Coming to Missouri, where you didn't really know anyone, what was your strategy to try to engage those stakeholders?
Well, I think it's really important to see as many people as you can at the start, and at a place like Mizzou, it is the flagship. And what attracted me to this job, after being in San Diego and being in Paradise and really on vacation every day, and they, you led that search, and it was important for me to feel like I could help, and they. Agriculture is the largest industry in the state. I felt like my ag background could help. I think my other experiences in the Pac-10 at the time, and at different levels and different jobs, I felt like I could come here and help the program. Obviously, it was in the SEC and in great shape, but they had some issues, and so I felt like I could come and help. But so it was important, really, then to engage as many people as we could, so that they could. I think at the time Brian White was here, I think he introduced me. Here's Jim Sterk. He grew up on a dairy farm. I think almost a meeting around the state.
You got a standing O, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But it's really, my experience at Washington State really helped me, because here, it's one of the few schools that's a research institution, and it's also a land grant institution. So it has extension and engagement around the the state. In every county of the state, there are Mizzou employees and workers around, and so we've spent a lot of time trying to work with Extension and that part, but also a lot of time in St. Louis and Kansas City, and we've done some things to engage, and we have an ambassador program from each of the counties, and so I think that was it was important to reach out at that time.
Yeah, good. You had an unusual occurrence in that you had an interim chancellor at the time who actually hired you.
Yeah.
So you came to Mizzou without knowing the most important stakeholder you've got, who would be your chancellor, your president, your boss. So what was your thought about that?
It caused me to pause, and that I think Hank Foley, was doing a great job, and had hired a number of people, like the vice chancellor for Extension and there were a number of us that were hired at that time, and we kind of banded together.
Mm-hmm.
We had, I think, initially disappointed that he wasn't the one. He left and ended up getting a presidency in New York, and I text him every once in a while now about certain things, but a great guy and cared deeply about this place. But they ended up hiring a great individual in Alex Cartwright from Buffalo, and he's been a great one to partner with and work with, and I think he understands, allows me to do my job, but also he's there for resource and to strategize on a lot of the issues that we deal with, and so we have a great working relationship, and that ended up, it doesn't always work out that way,
right.
and so it was a risk, but I felt like there were enough people on the committee. I just said, you got to get the right guy or the right person here, and they really felt like they did, and I now agree.
Well, a lot of people would take pause over that. I'm sure you did, but the decision you made was good for you and good for Missouri, and here you are. So it's game day. You said you were up till 9:30 last night here at school, and then this morning back again early. And talk about your weekend and all the stakeholders that you're going to interact with, and what maybe your message is to them.
Well, we're at the end of a university-wide campaign, and so the campaign committee was on campus, and we met with them all day. It's directed by our central development, but I was involved, and a lot of our key stakeholders are involved in that, and the ability to help move your program forward is relying upon people that want to invest and help the university and athletics move forward. So spending time with them, talking about things, what's the next big ideas that we want to tackle, and how can we go about that. We had yesterday, you met with some of our coaches and staff, and professional development is really important, and we want to, now that I got a few years here, I've caught my breath a little bit, but to organize that and help our staff have opportunities that I had as growing up in the business. So then it's people coming from out of town, from all over the place, and we've got individuals coming from Dallas, and I had lunch with a couple from Atlanta, and they only make one trip a year, but support us in a significant way. And then we had reunions, the '69 Big 8 champs, and they played in the Orange Bowl, and they were here, had 50 of their teammates all back together, which is, Orange Bowl said they've never seen that many for a 50-year reunion. And Dennis Pope was on that
really?
team. Yeah, who you would know, and just someone from the NCAA, worked at the NCAA a long time, and so a great group there. Baseball had a golf tournament and reunion, and they're here, and then it starts right away in this morning. The tailgate started at 8 o'clock. So Work with our Tiger Scholarship Fund of who's into town and we don't get maybe a chance to see. I have a list of all the suites and club areas and who's here this week that we might have a chance to talk to that we don't normally, but then also the regulars that are key people that are invested heavily in what we do, and so I try to spend time time with them. Try to see them early, and then at least in the first half, and then today I don't think I'm going to get up to the suite where I'm hosting some people probably till after halftime.
Yeah, and when I was in your role, I was always torn between really paying attention to what's going on the field,
Yeah.
and my responsibilities that dealt with the media or with fans or donors and trustees, et cetera. How do you balance all that?
Yeah, that's a great one. I try to watch as much as I can too, and then I try to record it, so then maybe see it see it tonight. When I didn't get to see the game, but yeah, I'm doing the pregame radio show at an hour before, and it's fun to see people engaged at that level and coming to and spending time at the university, and we're that conduit, and so I take that role very seriously, and so we try to create a great atmosphere around in our south end zone that we built. People are raving about it and really love the engagement points there. We have a huge club, a bunker club that's at field level where the team goes through, and some things that, as I was in San Diego and we were starting to develop a football soccer stadium together, wanted to, as that south end zone was starting, I told the architects, here's what we want. We need to engage them at that level, and that's what I think will continue to bring people to games.
Sure, yeah. So game's over. What's your relationship and your plan? When do you sit down with the coach, or do you?
I try to see him right after, and then.
Do you go to the locker room?
I do. I don't ever go before the game, but then afterwards, I feel like I want to be there, support, win or lose, and just observe, and I don't say anything other than to the coaches and congratulate the kids and things like that. But I try to stay in the back and listen and observe. Where are we? When Barry first started, he was highly criticized. We didn't start very well, and I kept telling people he's got the locker room. They're there, and there was a core group of players that really believed in what was going on and wanted to do better, and so he had to build that culture too, and it's proved a point, and he's been very successful. I think most successful in his first 3 years since like Warren Powers
great.
here at Mizzou. So it's a really we have good momentum that way.
Another group of your stakeholders are your students, in particular your student athletes. I guess that's what I'm really talking about. So in looking at the job that your coaching staff is doing, how much do you interact with your students to try to assess their experience?
That's probably not as much as I'd like to, and I need to do more. And I feel like I get pulled a lot. And this year I really have asked to schedule it so that I am going to all our leadership groups and throughout the year and throughout the week. And I do. Sometimes I do have to rely on our key leaders, our deputies and associates that are there. They're assigned, and they have that day to day with that sport, so that if I'm not there, then they can be the eyes and ears and what's going on, because I can't be everywhere at once. And a lot of times I get stuck in meetings across campus and things, so I rely on those staff to really be the conduit.
Yeah, I think one of the things I missed, the more responsibilities I took on, the further away from your students you got. And so the informal interactions with students, so you have interactions with the leadership, probably in some fashion, but the informal, having a lunch with a kid or, bumping into them across campus, that became difficult. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, and you almost have to schedule it. So we have a couple different meal areas now with the South End Zone. So yesterday I had lunch in there and sat by the academic advisor as she was talking to the students as they were coming in, and it was a way to just see them on a basis that I don't normally, and then I go over to the other meal, our Matsy we call it, and be there around lunch and see them, and just so they see me a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I need to do it. If one area where I feel like I can really improve, it's that and that connection, because you only have them for few short years, 4 short years, and they come in as teenagers, leave as young adults, and you obviously want to hire and retain the people that are going to have the most impact, and that's the coaches and your staff around that sport. But you miss that, and
Sure
I
you do.
missed it. Yeah, when I coached high school and then moved out of it, it was really hard.
Well, I can assure you that you've had a meaningful impact on the lives of those students, even though you don't see them every day, by hiring the good people and putting their priorities first. So I want to congratulate you on that. I want to thank you for taking time this morning on a busy day. Go beat the Gamecocks.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
And we'll see another big Southeastern Conference football game a little later this afternoon. Thanks, Jim Sterk,
Enjoy. Thank
University
you.
of Missouri.